When we think of a village, we often picture a pretty simple, quiet life. But here's a wild thought. There are over 600,000 villages in India, and managing them? Well, that's a massive job. We're talking about everything from water and electricity to keeping land records and, yep, settling fights. There's this huge, complex system working behind the scenes. So today, let's pull back that curtain and see how rural administration really works. And our story, believe it or not, starts with something incredibly simple. Just a little line in the dirt. It's a raised boundary, called a bund, and its job is to separate one farmer's field from another. It's really a line of trust, a line of ownership. Now, for a farmer we'll call Mohan, that line was everything. His family had a small plot of land, and that bund, well, it defined their livelihood, season after season. But one morning, boom, everything changed. Mohan noticed his neighbor, Raghu, had actually shifted the bund over by a few feet. Now, Raghu wasn't just any neighbor. His family was really powerful. They owned a ton of land, and his uncle was the village sarpanch, the head of the village. Raghu had basically just stolen a piece of Mohan's land. So what are you supposed to do when someone crosses the line, literally and figuratively? This one little village dispute is about to unpack the entire administrative system that's designed to handle exactly this kind of thing. All right, our first stop is looking at how this argument blows up and who you call first: the police. And this is where things get really intense, really fast. First, there was an argument. Mohan goes to Raghu, and Raghu just flat out denies everything. Then it turns violent. Raghu and his workers actually start beating Mohan up. Thankfully, neighbors heard the commotion, rushed in, and saved him. This brutal turn left Mohan with only one real choice. He had to go to the police. But here's the thing. He couldn't just go to any police station he wanted. This brings up a super important idea called police jurisdiction. See, every single police station is in charge of a specific area. Any incident, whether it's a theft or a fight like this, has to be reported to the station that covers that zone. It's not about what's convenient, it's the law. So Mohan and his neighbors get to the right police station, and they meet the officer in charge, the station house officer, or SHO. But instead of getting help, they hit a brick wall. The SHO was incredibly rude and just dismissed the whole thing, saying he didn't have time for such minor complaints. And this perfectly shows the gap you can sometimes find between what's supposed to happen and what actually happens. On the left, you've got the SHO's reaction, refusing to even write down the complaint and ignoring Mohan's obvious injuries. But on the right, that's his official duty, to investigate and take action on all cases in his area. The bottom line is, he just wasn't doing his job. This is where the community really stepped up. Mohan's neighbors, who saw the whole thing, started arguing with the officer. They insisted that the case had to be registered. Faced with all that pressure, the officer finally gave in. The complaint was officially filed, and he promised an investigation would follow. Okay, so filing a report about the assault is one thing, but it doesn't fix the original problem, that shifted boundary line. For that, you need a completely different kind of expert. Think of them as a dispute detective, but one who deals with records, not crime scenes. And that detective is the Patwari. This person is a key administrative officer in the village. Now, you might hear them called other names like Lekpal or Kanunga, depending on what state you're in, but their main job is always the same. They are the official keeper of all the land records. The Patwari's role is actually huge, way bigger than just settling fights. I mean, look at this list. They're out there measuring fields, they're constantly updating all the village land records, they organize how land revenue gets collected, and they even report back to the government on what crops are being grown. They are basically the government's eyes and ears on the ground. So how do they do all this? Well, with this magic document, the Khasra record. This is the master file. What you're seeing is a simple version for Mohan and Raghu's village. You can clearly see their plot numbers, their names as owners, the exact area of their land in hectares, and even what they're growing. This isn't based on anyone's opinion. It's a precise official record. Now with this record, the Patwari has a super clear, evidence-based way to solve the whole thing. It's a simple process. First, they look at the official map and the Khasra record. Then, they go out to the fields and physically measure both Mohan's and Raghu's land. They take those new measurements and compare them to what's in the official record. And just like that, they can say for sure if that boundary was moved. It's a peaceful, factual solution to what started as a really heated, violent argument. Now, this system of keeping records has impacts that go way beyond arguments between neighbors. It's actually at the very heart of a major social change in India. Let's take a look at a new law, one that was inspired by a daughter's wish. This quote from a poem is just so powerful. I really want a place of my own, not dowry of silk and gold. It really gets to this deep desire for ownership, for security, something that for a long, long time was denied to many women when it came to family land. Just look at the monumental shift on this slide. Before 2005, in most states, Hindu women just didn't get a share of the family's farmland. If a father passed away, his property was only split up among his sons. But after 2005, a new law changed everything. It says that sons, daughters, and their mothers all get an equal share. And this isn't just one state. This applies everywhere in the country.
So remember that year, 2005. The law was the Hindu Succession Amendment Act, and it marks a massive turning point for property rights and gender equality in India.
And you can't overstate the real-world impact of this. This one single change empowers millions of women. Think about Sudha from our source material. She's the oldest daughter in a farming family. After her father dies, her mother can now confidently go to the Patwari and get the land transferred not just to her sons, but to all her children, including Sudha. For Sudha, this means real economic security, a dependable share of her family's land that's truly hers. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of the key players we've met. You've got the police, who are there to maintain law and order. You have the Patwari, the expert on the ground doing the measuring and record keeping. And then you have senior officials like the Tehsildar, who supervise all the Patwaris and also act as a judge for land disputes. It's all part of a very structured system. And isn't that incredible? From one little shifted boundary line in the dirt, this whole interconnected system comes into view, a system for administration, for justice, and even for huge social reform. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. These systems, this bureaucracy, can often feel so distant and complicated, right? Just like Mohan found out at the police station. So the big question for all of us is, how do we make sure this whole machine actually serves everyone fairly and justly?